From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. This week marked the 14th, 15th, and 16th legislative days of the Alabama Legislature's 2025 regular session. That puts us past the halfway point of the session in terms of meeting days. Lawmakers will take a break next week and return on April 1st, when they'll have until May 19th to meet for the final 14 legislative days. There's a lot coming up in the second half of the session, including work on the state's budgets. I'll talk with Senate Majority Leader Steve Livingston and House Minority Leader Anthony Daniels more about that later in the show. Our coverage this week starts in the Senate, where a major piece of pharmacy legislation was considered. Senate Bill 252, which aims to regulate pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, passed unanimously this week. The bill has been in the works for weeks, with lawmakers making changes even as they debated it on the Senate floor. Capitol Journal's Jeff Sanders reports.
When it comes to passing legislation, many bills are already worked out behind the scenes before reaching the Senate floor. Senate Bill 252 was a rare example of the legislative process unfolding in real time, with senators actively negotiating and refining its details during debate. The bill's sponsor, Senator Billy Beasley, says the goal is simple: make prescription drugs more affordable for patients and protect independent pharmacies.
The cost of prescription drugs are almost unaffordable for anyone, even if you have insurance. And so I'm hoping that more states will pass legislation like we've passed today in Alabama that sends a message to the PBM industry.
PBMs serve as a middleman between insurance companies and pharmacies, controlling drug prices and reimbursement rates. Many independent pharmacies argue that PBMs often pay them less than what it costs to fill prescriptions, forcing them to close their doors.
We need to get this relief immediately to pharmacists across the state and to their patients, because they're closing on average about 3 per month.
The bill requires fairer reimbursements for independent pharmacies, restricts PBM fees, and requires that 100% of drug manufacturer rebates go back to health plans instead of PBM profits.
Clearly what the PBMs have been doing, the product they've been selling, we're going to save you money, is absolutely false.
At one point, Senator Chris Elliott proposed delaying the bill's start date until next year.
10 ayes, 21 nays, 1 abstention. The Senator Elliott amendment fails.
But lawmakers rejected that idea. Instead, the Senate settled on an October 1st start date at the beginning of the new fiscal year. Supporters say the bill is about protecting patient access to local pharmacies and ensuring fair business practices in the prescription drug market.
I had a little quote about what a PBM was. Stands for pretty bad medicine.
Senate leadership praised the effort, calling it a major win for consumers and small businesses.
Guys, this has been a deliberation like we're supposed to have on this floor. The way that we handled this business might not have been very pretty, but we went back and forth and made this bill better by the end of the day.
For Beasley, a longtime pharmacist, the fight is personal.
A pharmacist is going to help folks in need.
With unanimous support in the Senate, the bill now heads to the House for further debate. Reporting for Capitol Journal, I'm Jeff Sanders.
Thank you, Jeff. On to the House, where lawmakers considered tax cut legislation and a plan to offer public school and state employees paid parental leave. Capitol Journal's Randy Scott reports.
If we go into a recession, or if we have a downturn in our economy, we've got to make sure we can afford what we've already obligated ourselves to.
Revenue, the economy, and taxes are all on the minds of lawmakers this regular session. Specifically, how and which taxes, such as the tax on overtime pay, will benefit citizens and Alabama.
When it goes from estimation of $30 million to what it's over 300, what I seen today was $319 million. I mean, that's just, I don't think it's good government when you do that. And it's nothing, I'm not against the bill at all. Matter of fact, like I said, I support it. But I also think if we're going to be conservative in our budgeting process, we got to do it in a mindful way.
In addition to the proposals like making the overtime tax exemption permanent, completely eliminating the grocery tax and reducing the state income tax, we're also focused on long-term growth and investment to keep Alabama's economy strong in the face of uncertainty.
Work continues on other taxes and issues, such as House Bill 327, the Parental Leave Bill. Representative Jenny Shaver introduced this concept last year, but it failed in the Senate. She's bringing it back this year and combining it with portions of another bill from Senator Vivian Davis Figures, focusing on education personnel.
The bill that I brought was just for state employees only, and that bill passed unanimously from this body, went to the Senate. Senator Figures was carrying a bill to do the same for education employees. So when the bills were together in the Senate, the sentiment was that they should be merged so that the benefits would mirror each other.
The House approves House Bill 327.
So it's definitely a bipartisan bill. We had bipartisan co-sponsors, and it's good for our education system. It's good for us to be able to recruit the personnel we need and to be able to retain them.
I think the impact will be seen in future years and the effects of it and how it helps families and help to support families and enable them to properly bond with their children and have that time at home to take care of their children.
At the State House, Randy Scott, Capitol Journal.
Thank you, Randy. And just a note on that parental leave bill, Governor Ivey has also championed that legislation, so she is expected to sign it into law soon. That will mean probably one of the biggest policy developments so far this session. Another high-profile bill of this session has now become law. Governor Ivey this week signed into law Senate Bill 67. This is the legislation that will revamp the governance structure at the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs, making the commissioner a member of the cabinet and moving the board from an administrative one to an advisory one. It was born out of the dust-up last year that led to the removal of former VA Commissioner Kent Davis. The bill was sponsored by State Senator Andrew Jones and carried in the House by State Representative Ed Oliver. And since that law went into effect immediately, Ivey took the opportunity to appoint Brigadier General Jeff Newton as the new Commissioner of Veterans Affairs. Newton had been serving as interim commissioner these last several months. Prior to his appointment, Newton was director of the Joint Staff at the Alabama National Guard and had a 41-year career in the military. More legislative action to report. This week, lawmakers debated a bill that would give a select group of inmates serving life sentences a second chance at liberty. Senate Bill 156, known as the Second Chance Bill, is sponsored by State Senator Will Barfoot and was also championed by Governor Ivey in her State of the State address. The measure would allow inmates sentenced to life without parole under the Habitual Felony Offender Act to petition for resentencing if their original crime would not carry that same punishment under today's laws. The bill faced opposition from some Republicans, with them arguing that it could undermine sentencing laws. It initially failed on the Senate floor with a 16-16 tie vote. But after some behind-the-scenes negotiations, State Senator Jack Williams, who had previously voted no, moved to reconsider. On a second vote, Senate Bill 156 passed 17-18 and now heads to the House for further debate.
Is there an automatic, we've let you out early and you've reoffended, we put you in prison under the Habitual Felony Offender Act, and you have habitually felony offended again, is there an automatic go back to jail, or do we have to re-adjudicate this?
I understand what we're trying to accomplish here. You're mentioning 200 or so. We don't really know how many there are. The only other concern I got is the courts. We are trying to keep, and we're establishing new courts already, and more are needed, and yet we're going to put this additional petition that's in there that we haven't had. So I have a concern about that too.
I would just say, you know, the Alabama Policy Institute is a very conservative organization, came out with a letter of support saying that, you know, they applauded the governor and for, you know, pushing this bill and for me carrying the bill. So I don't think it's a soft on crime approach. Again, under current law, we let individuals with much more heinous offenses out under current standards today than we did those 150 to 200 individuals who were sitting in prison for life without the possibility of parole.
A pair of election-related bills sparked debate in the Senate this week as senators questioned how the state maintains its voter rolls and verifies voter residency. Senate Bill 142, sponsored by State Senator Wes Kitchens, would formally remove the Electronic Registration Information Center, or ERIC, as a resource for tracking voter address changes. Alabama already stopped using ERIC in January of 2023 under Secretary of State Wes Allen, who instead launched the Alabama Voter Integrity Database, or AVID, to manage the state's voter rolls. Meanwhile, Senate Bill 158, also sponsored by Barfoot, would prohibit the use of state-issued foreign national driver's licenses as a valid form of identification for voting. The measure targets licenses issued to non-citizens, including immigrants who later become naturalized citizens. Democratic leader Senator Bobby Singleton voiced concerns over both measures, saying he wants more time to discuss their impact with the Secretary of State's office. After some debate on the Senate floor, both bill sponsors agreed to carry the bills over for further discussion at a later date. Here's what Singleton had to say about why he's pressing for more time to review the proposals.
Because I want to talk some more with the Secretary of State. We started this conversation earlier, just before coming in today. I want to kind of complete those conversations, get me a better understanding of where they're going with this. How do we make it work? Because I don't want us to continue to change some just because one somebody. And that could be avoided, because just as well as we could say don't accept this license, we could do training to tell them to accept it. Okay? The same thing. And so I just want to make sure where we're going, making sure that we're not denying people the right to vote, because it sounds, on the surface, you're right. You will be trying to give everybody that right to vote. But I can see it at some point, it could be used for something bad also.
The House this week also passed legislation prohibiting campaign contributions and expenditures from foreign nationals. House Bill 363 from State Representative James Lomax is meant to prevent election interference from foreign entities.
It could be a foreign-based company, but if they have a domestic operation, then funds from that domestic operation can contribute to campaigns within the United States. So that'd be the same for this, under this bill as well.
Okay, have you have any occurrence of this happening prior to now?
Yes, throughout the United States, this has been an issue.
I'm talking about in the state, in this state, because this is not a federal bill that it's a state law that you're passing here. But have you found any occurrences in the state of Alabama? The reason why you're bringing this legislation?
Well, there's been occurrences that, again, through ballot referendums, it's been unknowingly. So, I mean, the fact that it's happened in other states, it could easily be happening here, and we just don't know it because you don't know where the money's coming from.
Okay, so that's what I was wondering, why you're proceeding, you're being proactive on it.
Yeah.
Okay, not reacting.
That bill passed unanimously and now goes to the Senate. The House also passed legislation that would remove state sales tax from certain infant care products and reproductive products. House Bill 152 from State Representative Neil Rafferty would make diapers, baby formula, maternity clothing, and menstrual products exempt from state sales tax.
Deals with the removing the state portion of the sales tax, state sales tax on baby supplies, baby formula, maternity clothing, and menstrual hygiene products for personal use.
We take taxes off for everything because I don't think we need to take taxes off maternity clothes and menstrual hygiene. We already giving that away free. You know, we give it to the children in the school for free. We pay for that. Some things, yes. Food, yes. If you're talking about your prescriptions, yes. But I don't want to be a society where we don't collect any taxes, because within our society there are those people that don't have, and not saying that they don't work. We have the working poor.
Right.
So we need some taxes so that government can take care of their people.
That bill also passed unanimously and now goes to the Senate. The Senate Health Committee held a public hearing over legislation meant to tighten regulations on marijuana-derived products. Senate Bill 237 from State Senator Tim Melson would place new restrictions on psychoactive cannabinoids found in hemp, including compounds like Delta H THC. It would also place those products under the jurisdiction of the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board. During that public hearing, several business owners and hemp growers voiced strong opposition to the bill. They argued that it would harm small businesses and limit consumer access. The bill failed to advance on a tie vote. Senator Melson, who chairs the committee, has the authority to bring the bill back up for reconsideration, but he said he currently has no plans to do so.
It puts hemp under ABC, which oversees liquor, not agricultural products. This move not only burdens an already stretched agency, but it also risks penalizing and criminalizing hemp products more harshly than alcohol and tobacco.
These products that we're talking about are clearly being used as recreational marijuana, and they are getting people high. On my way down today, I decided to stop and pick up some products, and I asked the lady, is this going to get me high? And she said, oh yeah, it's definitely going to get you high.
I mean, there were some, if you heard them speak today, that they're against the bill because they want to ban it. Then there's some that don't want anything to happen. They have a market out there that's unregulated. I mean, the 2018 hemp bill did not include for consumption. It was only for paper products, clothing and rope. And it wanted to get a market out there for hemp. Nothing that the U.S. Department of Ag will not grade it or analyze it for consumption human. That was not the intent of the bill. These individuals have found a loophole industry that they're trying to exploit for, they keep bringing up all these medical reasons, and those medical reasons, in my opinion, are excuses to get a product out there for people to, I'll just say, enjoy, whatever we want to call it.
The Senate Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry Committee approved a separate marijuana bill from Melson, who was the original sponsor of Alabama's medical cannabis law. Senate Bill 72 aims to resolve the legal challenges facing the Medical Cannabis Commission by increasing the number of licenses for integrated facilities. Those are businesses that both grow and sell medical cannabis and have been at the heart of all these lawsuits. It would also require an independent firm to oversee the selection process for future licenses in an effort to improve transparency. Despite the bill passing committee, Melson himself expressed doubt about its future, citing strong opposition, including from the commission itself.
I think there was an effort, but I don't think there was a credible effort to make sure that these people were ranked in a proper order. When you hear some of the judges talk about the factors that they use to influence them, it makes it suspect. I'd hate for a lot of people to go in and produce excess product that's never going to have a chance to be put out there. I don't know if it'll ever come up on the floor. A lot of outside influences, a lot of deep pockets, a lot of constituents in different areas. The 5 people who got licensed, or 5 corporations, have a lot of influence as well, and so it's going to be a struggle.
Also on the issue of marijuana, this week, I sat down with Medical Cannabis Commission Director John McMillan to get an update in the wake of the appeals court ruling that will restart that long-stalled licensing process. He said that with no other hiccups, medical marijuana products could be available sometime this year. He also cautioned lawmakers about the potential setbacks of passing new legislation, however well-intended.
The only concern I would have, or you might say a word of caution to the legislature, would be careful what changes you make, because those kind of things could cause us a whole new round of litigation and a whole new, we had 100,000 pages of application, over 100 pages of rules and regulations. There's plenty of things there for creative lawyers to figure out to sue about, and we're in the best position we've been through this whole process right now with this civil appeals ruling that mandates us to be able to move forward the appeals, with the hearing process, and that's what we need to do now.
The House Education Budget Committee met this week and considered a number of bills, including legislation that would offer workers' compensation insurance to teachers and other public school workers. Senate Bill 1 from State Senator Sam Gavan passed the Senate unanimously, but faced questions in House committee about the potential cost to the state.
So many people are surprised to find out that our education employees do not have workers' compensation insurance. Our state employees have it, but not our education employees. Clarifications on whether occupational diseases are covered as they are for state employees. That was something that was pointed out. There were some things like just how things are done in practice. It's giving notice by electronically or digitally as opposed to certified mail. That's just not, they don't do certified mail anymore in that world.
That bill was carried over, and lawmakers said they would take it up again after next week's break. The committee also reconsidered legislation that would place a 4% fee on outgoing international cash transfers. House Bill 297 from State Representative Jennifer Fidler is part of a package of bills relating to illegal immigration. Revenue from those fees would be split among a sheriff's fund to help offset the cost of enforcing immigration laws, public schools for the education of English language learners, and to hospitals for uncompensated care expenses. The bill was held up 2 weeks ago after concerns were raised about those new fees, but the bill this week rather, cleared committee.
And we wanted to make sure it was clear who it affected and who it wasn't in that payment processor definition. So who it does not affect, if I may go over this again.
Sure, please.
Individuals who use a payment processor like PayPal or Venmo, any transaction originating from a banking institution, a bank or credit union payment processor, anything that facilitates funds that originate from a bank or credit card or debit card. It does not affect any bank or credit union wire or sale of money order or check cashing or credit and debit card transactions. Who it does affect would be individuals who send cash wired through companies that generally offer in-person services that include cash transfers like Western Union or MoneyGram, or individuals who send cash transfers who are not licensed legitimate banks.
And that bill will now go to the full House. One issue that will await lawmakers when they return from the break is a bill that would allow heavier log trucks on Alabama's highways. Senate Bill 110 and its companion, House Bill 204, have both cleared committee and are awaiting a vote in their respective chambers. The bills propose increasing weight limits for log truck axles, something supporters say will benefit the timber industry and prevent log truck drivers from being unfairly penalized with court fees and fines. They argue that drivers are often fined for exceeding axle weight limits, even when the overall weight of their trailer is within legal limits. But state troopers and transportation officials warn that heavier loads could mean more damage to roads and bridges and a greater risk to drivers.
We just want to make sure that everybody that gets on Alabama roadways makes it home. So that's why we're involved with this particular piece of legislation, and that's why we are concerned about it, because again, for us and a lot of people that are in law enforcement, not just troopers, this could be sheriff's deputies, this could be police officers, we see the aftermath. You know, we see the families, we come in contact with the families of the people when they lose a life. So we really want to create a situation where everybody can be successful, right? So are we doing that? If we put an extreme amount of weight on these vehicles and on these trailers, is that really creating a situation for that driver to be successful? And if that answer is no, then we have to look at that.
Dozens turned out to the State House this week as part of a demonstration protesting immigration measures being considered here in the legislature. There are several immigration-related bills moving this year, including some attempting to align state law enforcement with the ramped-up deportation efforts of the Trump administration. Organized by the Alabama Coalition for Immigrant Justice, The rally was meant to demonstrate how critical immigrants are to Alabama's economy.
Today we stand together to defend the human rights and civil rights of immigrants. Look around you. So many people from every corner of our state, from Russellville to Fort Payne, from Huntsville to Mobile, from Coleman to Birmingham, and from Tuscaloosa to Dothan, we all converge here in Montgomery, our capital state too. We are teachers, we're doctors, we're business owners, we're cooks, we're service workers, we're community leaders. We are an essential part of the backbone of this state. And we are here because we refuse to stay silent while immigrants are being targeted by harmful laws.
We want all the legislators in the building to understand the real impact of passing these kinds of laws on Alabama's economy, on its workforce. We know that immigrants are a huge piece of Alabama's economy, and these bills will be extremely damaging to all the sectors in Alabama's workforce.
The Alabama Senate had a special guest this week. Congressman Shamari Figures was back from Washington and made a brief visit to the State House. It was an emotional moment for Figures, who of course is the son of current State Senator Vivian Figures and former State Senator Michael Figures. He talked about that special tie to the State House and shared what he sees as the upcoming priorities when Congress reconvenes next week.
That podium is where my mother speaks from now, where my father spoke from for some 20 years, roughly 20 years or so. And so, it's just a reminder of how you got here and the sacrifices that were made for you to be here. Still trying to figure out how we can keep our rural hospitals and healthcare access here in the state of Alabama, number one. We met this morning with the Hospital Association on getting a better understanding of that issue. But at the end of the day, communities that are losing hospitals are slowly drying up, right? That's a recipe for disaster economically, from a healthcare access standpoint, from being able to build up a local tax base. And so getting back up there, getting to work on that issue, which is something that we've already done. Beyond that is make sure that we're standing up and protecting the interests of the federal interests that we have in this district, making sure that we're calling attention to federal cuts that are disproportionately impacting us, standing up in this next budget fight, standing up for Medicaid, standing up for Social Security, standing up for SNAP benefits, all of which people in this district and in this state participate in at a higher rate than the national average. So it's a lot of priorities, but those are some of the ones that are at the top.
The Alabama Reentry Commission met this week to discuss ongoing work by state agencies to reduce recidivism. Members heard from the Council of State Governments Justice Center about ways the state can use data to inform policies that can help former inmates reenter society when their sentences are complete.
The Council of State Governments Justice Center worked with the Reentry Alabama Commission to come up with recommendations to strengthen reentry in Alabama. We had working groups comprised of different stakeholders from across agencies and across the state, and they developed recommendations to strengthen workforce development and economic mobility for individuals that are released from prison, opportunities to expand employer engagement, strengthen relationships and educate employers, provide education and training to individuals, recommendations around expanding housing opportunities, access to behavioral health and substance use treatment, as well as recommendations to strengthen data capacity and being able to track outcome measures to understand what's working and what's not working. The next step, the Commission is going to produce a final report that includes the full list of recommendations, and then the next step is to develop a statewide infrastructure that can move forward on implementation. So developing a statewide reentry commission that can really develop action plans and take these recommendations and translate them into action.
This week marked Buy Alabama's Best Day here at the Capitol Complex. Sponsored by the Alabama Grocers Association, the Alabama Department of Agriculture and Industries, and the Alabama Food Manufacturers and Producers Association. The event featured Alabama-made products from across the state, allowing passers-by to sample all the fares. Governor Ivey also paid a visit and highlighted the billions of dollars these producers pump into the Alabama economy.
Folks, we may politely disagree,
over who's got the best basketball team, but when it comes to food, there's no dispute that the state of Alabama has the best. It's been said that good food brings folks together. That's true not only at the dinner table, but also for a growing economy. Over 188,000 Alabamians work in food manufacturing, as well as wholesale and retail food jobs all over the state. In just the last 13 months, I've participated in ceremonies launching major new food manufacturing plants both in North Alabama and South Alabama. The Alabama food industry jobs generate more than $6.8 billion with a B dollars in wages, with a staggering $18 billion with a B dollars in total economic impact. Alabama's food producers, in partnership with the Alabama Grocers Association and the Alabama Department of Ag and Industries, also play a vital role in supporting charities that give back to our state, including Children's of Alabama. From Milo's to Conecuh Sausage and everyone in between, Alabama is home to the very best. I can't wait to get in line to sample some of these great eats. Thank you all for coming out to join us today in honoring Alabama's food industry. May God continue to bless each and every one of you and the great state of Alabama.
Coming up after the break, I'll sit down with Senate Majority Leader Steve Livingston for his perspective here at our halfway point. After that, House Minority Leader Anthony Daniels is in studio to talk about a number of issues, including that tax cut legislation. We'll also get both of their NCAA tournament picks. Stay with us.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
You're watching Alabama Public Television, celebrating 70 years of service to Alabama.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Joining me next is State Senator Steve Livingston, Majority Leader of the Alabama Senate. Mr. Leader, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Todd, for having me. It's glad to see you again. Appreciate your invitation this evening.
Absolutely. Well, it's always good to hear from you and catch up. And here we are at the halfway point of session. Actually, I guess a little past halfway point.
Day 16.
That's right. So just from your perspective and the majority at the Senate, how has this first half of the legislature gone so far?
Todd, I remember a little bit like last year when we were talking about Senator Reed had divided up the session into thirds. I think that Senator Gudger's divided up in half, and we've had a really productive first half of the session, taking care of some issues that are key to Alabama and Alabama values and protecting Alabama's values. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, y'all have dived into crime legislation, immigration legislation. I mean, some tough things that can be pretty thorny, but y'all gotten through them.
Who would have ever thought we'd have to define what a woman is? But we had to define what a woman is, and so we could have our athletes protected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of culture war issues kind of trickling down from Washington in many ways.
Right.
I wanted to ask you about some of the legislative action this week, specifically on the issue of PBMs. These are pharmacy benefit managers. Legislation's been around for a couple of years, really, to give pharmacies a break. They are really struggling dealing with what they call unfair reimbursement rates when it comes to prescription drugs and all that. So this legislation, man, it's been through the ringer, and we saw y'all on the Senate floor, some real sausage being made right there,
Right there, yes, sir. You're
so
correct.
Talk about what happened with this bill and how y'all came to a resolution.
There's been really 4 hard weeks of work put in behind the scenes by Senator Butler, Senator Beasley, Senator Stutz, and Senator Jones had some work going on. 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I think the Mr. Pro Tem had asked that Senator Bell do a little what's the word I'm looking for?
Like a
little mediation between the two of them, try to come to one bill, and out of that his staff has taken, and we've sat down and we've worked through the one bill. We got down to where we came to the floor today with a bill. We had some amendments being offered up we had one that was rejected. We had one that ended up being withdrawn and bringing another one, and we had some issues with that one individual amendment. So we had a little conversation. Senator Singleton and I visited on the microphone for a little while while the sausage was being made in the corner, and we came to a resolution. And you're correct. I think it was unanimous with the exception of Senator Weaver, who had to abstain because of family issues, or not issues, but family.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I found that really fascinating, and it was fun to watch because so much of what happens in the House and the Senate is kind of worked out, right? Y'all kind of work it out behind the scenes or in committee or whatever, but y'all are right there on the floor. And, you know, that's the first of a number of bills we're going to see on the issue of health care. You've got the whole Alpha plan coming up, second half of the session. Right. So talk about how y'all as a caucus go about deliberating thorny issues like that, because I mean everybody's got their own viewpoints and everything, but y'all try to stay united. How do y'all go about those deliberations?
Well, we have our caucus meetings on Tuesdays typically when we get into town, and if we need to after that, and the ability to do that afterwards if we have to. But we have conversations around the room. We try to work out those issues in that room. We get that, and we've got some folks that may be strong-willed and want to head in one direction. And it's a matter of putting them together and let's talk this out. Let's work this out and make sure we can do this. And it's better to do it before you get to the floor, because sometimes things don't work out on the floor as you want them to. So
kind of have that family discussion first.
Have that family discussion first, and if necessary, close the doors and excuse staff and have another family discussion. So
interesting. Well, y'all have got some decisions to make in the second half of the session when y'all get back. The House this week has been moving that tax cut legislation, right?
Yes, sir.
Grocery tax, accelerating that, some retiree taxes and things like that. But also, you know, speaking with Leader Daniels, he wants that overtime tax either renewed or made permanent. That's a big decision, right?
It's a huge decision.
So how are y'all going to go about?
That'll be an interesting question we've got to have, and that'll be some more sausage that'll be made. You know, they're going to send those tax credits up to us, and that with the overtime tax, it's going to be close to $500,000 of tax credits. And to be honest with you, we can't do all of it, I don't think. So, you know, we probably will look at focus. I can imagine us focusing on grocery tax. It seems to impact more people, so I think we will probably head in that direction and reduce the grocery tax, continue to work towards that. On that.
Well, it's interesting that you put it that way, because you say you can't do it all, and I think that bears explaining a little bit, because look, everybody loves tax cuts. Everybody would like to pay less in taxes, but where these taxes go, it's revenue to run the government, to go to in the taxes y'all are talking about, mostly to schools,
to education, right?
Right.
That's
and so
correct.
You want your tax cut, but you also don't want cuts to education. So is it incumbent upon y'all to try to explain that to constituents, to say, look, we've got to have money to actually function schools and government?
It's not only is it incumbent for us to do that, it's important that we make sure everybody understands we can't do that. We've cut taxes. We've cut a bunch of taxes since we've been here, and in the last several years under Senator Reed, and in the past when Senator Marsh was here, the last couple of years of his. Well, we've cut some taxes, and I heard a number that somebody said close to $1 billion that was thrown off in conversation the other night. This is some more. We just got to figure out what fits in the package just right, and then how much money do we have that we can cut.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, and that'll be another thing that y'all have to figure out in the second half of the session. Anything else coming up in the second half of the session? I'm wondering about the budgets. When might we see the education budget, the general fund budget start moving?
I think once we get back from break, you'll see the education budget maybe go down to the House from the Senate, and the general fund come up. I think you'll see that in the first week when we get back. Cell phone school ban, free schools will come back. There's a couple other odds and ends that might be in there too that we might have looked. We're not done with the PBM bill for sure. It'll come back to the Senate, probably amended in some capacity. Not to mention the Alpha Health Plan and the Blue Alpha. If the Speaker is able to work out some sort of deal, it'll probably come to us.
Yeah, I guess that's in committee right now.
I don't know if it's in committee yet. I think they've been working behind the scenes to try to eliminate all the questions and answer all the questions that are associated with it right now.
Probably a substitute coming at some point. And I do want to get into that issue, dive in with Alpha, with the other opponents of the bill and everything to really give a good explanation, because that's very complicated.
It is a complicated bill, yes, sir.
What would have to happen for you to consider this a successful session from the majority standpoint in the Senate?
Well, you know, the only thing we have to do constitutionally is do the budgets, and we'll definitely get those. But I think we've had a pretty successful session already with taking care of what is a woman, the Veterans Resource Center, the realignment of the Veterans Act. I think we've had a pretty successful session already. There'll be some more things to come.
Yeah, well, we're definitely going to be paying attention. While I've got you, it's March Madness. You got your bracket. You got your Final Four. Who's in your Final Four?
You know, I got my bracket, but I hadn't had time to fill it out yet. and you know, I would love to see Alabama-Auburn rematch somewhere along the way. But you know, I think Florida and Duke look awful tough.
They do, and I think the way it works out is that if Auburn and Alabama do face each other, it would be in the championship. I don't know if the state can handle the excitement that would happen there.
That might bring up the whole alignment on sports betting, you reckon?
No, okay. Well, I didn't even think about that. We may see some, I mean, who knows, but we could see gambling come up at the second half of the session. Any thoughts about that?
There's some conversation going on behind the scenes. I think some votes are being counted, you know, with the loss of, not the loss of Senator Reed, but with Senator Reed stepping down to become Secretary Reed. That's a yes vote that is gone. So
right.
Now, we didn't need one vote. Now we need two. So we'll see if what happens with that.
Yeah. Always, it wouldn't be a session if we weren't at least talking about the possibility of gambling legislation.
I think there's only been one time, and that was the fourth year of my first quadrennium, that we did not have a conversation about gaming.
Yeah, well, something's going to happen. We'll just wait to see. We're out of time. Senator, thanks again for coming on the show. We'll see you when you get back.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
Since 1997, Alabama Public Television has provided programs, services, and resources to child care professionals, teachers, and parents. Visit aptv.org/education to learn more.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal. Joining me next is State Representative Anthony Daniels, Minority Leader for the Alabama House of Representatives. Mr. Leader, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Todd. It's been a while.
Yeah, I know it has. It's good to catch up. We're here at the halfway point, a little past the halfway point, technically, with the 16th day being dispensed with. So another spring break coming up. At this halfway point, can you kind of tell me how session has gone so far from your perspective as the leader for the Democrats in the House?
Well, I think it's been an okay session. You know, right now there's a lot of uncertainty, especially around taxes. A lot of the conversations have been really focused a lot more on taxes the last couple of weeks and cutting taxes. In light of what's going on at the federal level, you know, we're trying to make some adjustments at the state level and have some conversations about what can we do to help Alabamians. And so it forces you to have those conversations in light of what's going on at the federal level. So I think in all, it's an okay session. There are a couple bills that we certainly were opposed to that you know, the police immunity, expanding immunity is certainly something that we're opposed to, that we fought hard. But I will tell you, to the credit of majority, they did work with us, Chairman Reynolds and the Speaker. They worked with us on a lot of, from where the bill started to where it ended up in the governor's office as well. So we certainly want to credit them for being flexible, working with us. But in the end, we know that we're at a certain sticking point that there's no way for us to be able to kind of come close together.
It was clear that there was dialogue going on. You at least like to see that, even if you can't, you know, 100% agree. I wanted to ask you about this. You mentioned the federal level. The DOGE thing has been a big deal on the federal level, right? Department of Government Efficiency, Elon Musk, man, he's ruffling all kinds of feathers. But it's also trickled down to the states, including Alabama. You've had, you know, Republicans say, hey, we've got our own little DOGE system. Y'all had a press conference saying, hey, we've got some DOGE ideas as well. Talk about what your message was in terms of that efficiency in government.
Well, we felt that anything that's $50 million or more that's not in the K-12 funding or higher education should be dynamic scored. We should dynamic score it to make certain that it's effective, not just waiting until we've already given the money, but to start testing and dynamic scoring it from implementation to execution.
Explain kind of what that means for our viewers.
So dynamic scoring is where you basically measuring the impact that the dollars are going to have. So you're looking at the program and you're saying, okay, you say you're going to do A, B, C, and D, and when you're starting the program now, the implementation of the program, where are you? Like, we're measuring along the way instead of waiting until the dollars are gone and then say, oh, it did work or it didn't work. So being better stewards of taxpayers' dollars and looking at the impact in a different way, engaging a think tank, a third-party think tank, to be able to look at ways to in an unbiased way, to measure progress and see whether or not it's meeting the goals. If it's designed to increase workforce participation, is it doing it? And what adjustments need to be made, or are you
as
planning
we're
to
going,
make?
Instead of just looking back 5 years later.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, you mentioned taxes, tax cut. It was tax cut week in the House of Representatives. Y'all passed a bunch of tax cuts, including that accelerated grocery tax, allowing locals, all that. We've covered it. But you have spoken out. Your overtime income tax cut is going to expire this year if y'all don't take action on it. And you've said, look, we need to renew this, make it permanent and all that. Doesn't look like anything's moving at the time. So what's your message to the majority in terms of that overtime income tax cut expiring, understanding that these other tax cuts are sort of meant to replace it in a way?
Yeah, I was very disappointed. The tax cuts that, think about this. We're talking about 1 cent on a dollar. You're not talking, when you look at it, you say, oh, let's cut the grocery tax. That sounds good, but we're cutting it 1 cent. That's 1 cent on a dollar right now. And then if this bill passes the Senate, it'll be then 2 cents. And so when you see the cost of goods and services increasing, you're telling me you're saving me 98 cents on a dollar? That's not a real savings. I mean, there's no one that called me and said, hey, thank you for saving me 2 cents on my bread or on my, a piece of candy or what have you. And so I think that realistically, we have to figure out a way to make investments. I would take those dollars that would have been proposed for a cut on the grocery tax to 1 cent. If we're not going to cut the entire grocery tax, then I think that we're wasting our time. So let's use those dollars to drive down costs. And if you use those dollars to make investments in our agriculture industry, whether it's whatever products it is that we're looking to get to market, the competition drives down costs. And so there's a larger savings long term for that family if you take that approach as opposed to cutting 1 cent on a dollar.
So you're talking about your overtime, because you're talking about productivity from the overtime.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm saying is that the grocery tax, unless you're cutting it entirely, 1 cent, cutting it 1 cent is not going to make a difference. You're telling me on every dollar you're saving me 2 cents, and then $10 you're saving me, $10 you're saving me, 20 cents, right? I mean, let's really look at where we are. And right now, that's not going to help a family. What will help families is cutting from 5% to 4% on the first 40 hours, or extending the overtime tax credit, looking at ways to help retirees. Those are things that are actually truly putting more money in the pockets of Alabamians, but it also yielding more money into the budget. The grocery tax does it. Let's make the investments in areas that's going to drive down costs, as opposed to a 1 cent or 2 cents on a dollar cut. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
The argument from the majority is, that grocery tax reaches basically every Alabamian because everybody buys groceries, versus the overtime only goes to those wage workers who do participate in overtime. How do you respond to that?
I would say that's not accurate, because folks that are on public assistance don't pay income tax on groceries anyway. Taxes on groceries anyway. So this is not necessarily going to touch everyone.
Okay.
And so I think that they're really misunderstanding the point there, because there's a segment of the population that doesn't pay taxes on necessity item groceries in general that are on SNAP benefits. So there's no taxes taken out. So that's inaccurate. The other piece to that is Anthony Daniels don't need a cut on the grocery tax, right, from an income standpoint. But there are middle America, middle Alabama, and poor Alabama that may need it more so than I would. But is that tax really worth the time? Or should we be making our investments in other places to drive down costs overall in order to have a bigger impact for that same population that we're trying to reach? And so let's if we're going to be factual here, let's be factual. The grocery tax itself, I want to see it eliminated. But realistically, I would rather see the costs drop down on the goods and services and create more competition so that it's more of a bang for my buck and more of a savings for me as an Alabamian. And then with the additional dollars from the tax cuts from the overtime, it's putting more money in my pocket so that I can buy more, I can purchase more. The purchasing power is a lot greater. So I think that oftentimes when we think about cuts, we like to hear the words, but we're not analyzing the impact. And that's why dynamic scoring is important. Is being able to dynamic score. Let's dynamic score the first 1 cent and tell the average family how much money they've saved. You can't talk about the families that are on SNAP benefits because they were already there. And so let's if we really want to do something, let's do something. And you can say there's a lot of things that if we drive down the cost of groceries in general, that impacts everyone. On items in general, if we drive down the cost of products and services in general, that helps everyone.
That's certainly a conversation going on all around the country. Real quick, what would make a successful? Like, we got another half a session coming up. What needs to happen to what you consider be a successful session for you and your caucus?
I think that extending overtime tax is not just a success for my caucus. I think it's a success for both caucuses. I think it's a success for the working men and women that are out there. You saw yesterday there are a lot of people visiting the State House that's working in manufacturing across the state of Alabama, talking to their representatives about how this overtime has helped them. A lady that's working a paper mill, she talked about how there's mandatory overtime in general. It's not a choice in their factory. So therefore, these extra dollars has made it more of an incentive for people to work overtime, but also keeping up, increasing the production schedule, which made their company more profitable and pay more. Their company pays more in taxes. So it's yielding a return. The other piece for me is looking at ways to help retirees. I think that Representative Garrett was on to something around helping retirees on their first $12,000 of the retirement benefits, and I certainly applaud him on that particular effort. And I think that we just got to do more to drive down costs, because at some point, all the spending that we're doing, if it's not impacting the pockets and impacting families and impacting the costs, then what are we spending for? What type of returns can we legitimately say that we're getting? We're not.
It's going to be an interesting second half of the session. Everybody gets a little breather next week. I think we're all grateful for that. Before I let you go, it's March Madness. Who you got? Who you got in your Final Four? Who you got winning the tournament?
Well, politically, of course, Alabama and Auburn and Alabama State now.
Yeah, but are you going to show your bracket? Yeah.
So I realistically, I'm a basketball player and former basketball player, and so I look at things a little bit different. I actually do have Duke and Michigan State kind of toward the end there. I have Auburn. I had Auburn. There's a lot of injuries that I see from Auburn. I see that.
And Alabama.
And Alabama. And so those injuries really concerns me when it's realistically making a decision realistically on how far we can go. Broome has been amazing. The other players on the team have been amazing. But I sense that he's nursing an injury, and his performance is not quite like it was at the beginning of the season. And I think other teams are recognizing that, and so they'll put on a lot of double and triple teams to kind of slow him down, and once they slow him down, they'll force everyone else to beat them. And I think for Alabama, I think the challenge there is our guard has to kind of come off some picks. I don't think that him penetrating and getting to the paint with 6'11", 7-footers down there, it makes it more difficult for him. And I've seen that he's challenged with that. And so I think that if we're going to make some adjustments, it has to be him coming off more picks and getting a clear shot from the outside in order for them to really have a chance down the stretch.
See, we could just have a whole interview about basketball. Yeah. Duke and Michigan State, those are high percentage picks for an NCAA tournament any year, really. Yeah. But look, we're out of time. Thanks again for coming on the show. We'll see you when you get back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
The Alabama Department of Archives and History was founded in 1901, becoming the nation's first publicly funded independent state archives agency. The archives identifies, preserves, and makes accessible records and artifacts of enduring historical value to the state. Thomas Owen founded the agency and served as its first director. He was succeeded by his wife, Marie Bankhead Owen, who headed the archives for 35 years and was the second woman to lead a state agency.
That's our show for this week. Thanks for watching. As we mentioned, the legislature is on break next week, so our nightly coverage will pause. Capital Journal will return at the same time next week when my colleague Randy Scott will be your host while I'm traveling in Washington. For our Capital Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.